Thank you, friends, for tuning in to our show From the Front Lines. This is where we learn to fight the battles of life. This is Pastor Larry, and today is March the 13th, 2020. And we are moving into the spring of the year. It's a beautiful time of the year. And even though we see a lot of flowers and see a lot of nice things and hear the birds chirping, there's a lot of meanness going on in our world. And there's a lot of meanness going on in our country. When the news broke on Wednesday evening, March the 11th, 2020, that one of the players in the sports arena in Oklahoma City tested positive for the coronavirus, there was fear and then there was panic. And I'm sure wherever you are, you've seen some of the panic because I know this thing has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. It's affected the stock market. It's affected the well-being of people. It's caused a panic. Stores are, been hit hard. I had just gotten out of church that Wednesday evening, the 11th, and a fellow pastor had texted me, and Oklahomans were now sure that the pandemic had hit home. And reports later that evening and the next day indicated that there were some 17,000 people at the game, and potentially all of them had been exposed to the coronavirus and could pass it on. So in short, we could all be casualties. And so many Oklahomans were in a state of panic. They began to think, well, this could be really bad. I mean, just a few months ago, it was on the other side of the world. Now it's right here in Oklahoma. So what about food? What about water? What about gasoline? How would we survive? Would we be able to get medication or medicine? So the crowds hit the stores and they began to stock up. No one wanted to go hungry. Canned goods, bags of beans were quickly bought out. And then, of all things, people couldn't find toilet paper. No toilet paper. What, pray tell, will we do without toilet paper? So we have to ask the question, is this coronavirus scare, is the coronavirus really that bad? Is it really a disaster in the making? Well, I can tell you one thing, it was certainly presented as a serious disaster. You could look at Drudge, that first page, and there were things in red and about how terrible it is. And so everybody wanted to stock up and take precautions. Everybody wanted to heed warnings. Airlines were not flying. Games were canceled. Concerts were canceled. People refused to gather together in crowds where they could be subject to getting the coronavirus. And when we think of it, warnings are, what should I say? They have a place in our lives. The Bible gives us many warnings. We're told to work, for the night is coming when no man can work. And so, of course, we are warned. Let's get busy. Let's not waste our time. Luke 12:40 says, "Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not." That's another warning. So there are warnings that are good. However, everything that is presented as a threat and everything that is presented as a potential disaster is not really a threat or a disaster. When I look over the last few months at the coronavirus epidemic and then the pandemic, there were three things that really troubled me. First of all, influenza traditionally sickens and kills many, many more people than the coronavirus. And yet we've never had this kind of a panic. At least I don't remember. Now, there was, of course, the 1918 influenza pandemic. 500,000 people in America were killed and about 50 million people worldwide. So traditionally, influenza sickens and kills many, many more people, but we never got so hyped up about influenza. It's true that people have died from the coronavirus and many had been sickened, but was it really an epidemic? Was it really a pandemic? So I thought I would do some checking on the CDC and go back into some of the records. And I found a September the 26th, 2018 Associated Press report This was 2018, September. And it said, according to the CDC, some 80,000 people had died from the flu the previous winter, the winter of 2017. Now, just get a picture of that. 80,000 had died. Now, it was reported that was the worst flu epidemic in 40 years, but I was around in 2017. I don't remember 80,000 people dying and everybody running to stores and packing up on beans and stealing all the toilet paper off the shelves and so forth. So I don't remember in 2017 that concerts and ball games were canceled. I don't remember that games were canceled, that the NBA closed the season early and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing that really troubled me, that influenza traditionally sickens and kills many, many more people than the coronavirus, and yet none of the things that we see going on today over the coronavirus occurred. But then there's a second fact that emerged in my mind, and that is I realized that the news thrives on sensationalism. People are drawn to sensationalized stories, especially threatening stories, that talk about the possibility of some horrible death, or a story that talks about a loss of life and limb or whatever. So when a crisis is real and when it's sensationalized, it becomes even more real and more threatening. Someone once said this: if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, if it's a bleeding news story, it'll be a leading story. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes Christian ministries have sensationalized stories, especially those that bear some resemblance or connection to Bible prophecy. I remember the so-called Y2K threat, the year 2000 disaster. It was really a big thing, and there were a lot of ministries that were pushing survival food and buying a Berkey. We at Southwest Radio Church did say, well, when you go to the store, get an extra can, and we did offer Berkeys. Berkeys are good, no problem with it. You might have a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, and even apart from a pandemic or some kind of an epidemic, a Berkey is really good. But that's the second thing that came to my mind. The news thrives on sensationalistic reporting. That's if you look at some of the headlines, a lot of the writers, a lot of the newspapers' editors, they kind of craft the words in a way that it really slaps you in the face. Now, here's the third factor, and that is that the media hates President Trump, and that is certainly no secret. So how can the media hurt President Trump? How can they make all the good that he has done with the economy and with so many other things? And he really has done a lot of good things with prison reform and so on and so forth. How can they make all the good things that he's done look very insignificant? Well, they need a crisis. The greater the crisis, the more they can show that it is killing people, killing the economy, causing disruptions, closing down the basketball season, making it hard for fans to enjoy basketball and so forth. The greater the crisis, the worse they can make it look, the greater the harm to President Trump. So the worse the crisis is, it's more of a disgrace to our president, and that's exactly what has been happening. For example, MSNBC actually said that they hoped that this would be Trump's Katrina. You remember Hurricane Katrina really devastated New Orleans, and the people were really unhappy with President Bush. They complained about it. They said his leadership was weak and bad, and he wasn't ready, and the country wasn't ready, and so on and so forth. And so the media was using this non-disaster as a disaster. And I don't mean to say that people didn't die from the coronavirus. I'm just saying that the hype and the preparation and the effect on the society is certainly not commensurate with the nature of the coronavirus. And now we find that the media has an ally, the Communist government of China. As a matter of fact, China is blaming President Trump for what has happened. Actually, the virus began in Wuhan, But China is now saying, well, yeah, but somehow the military, the American military got in there and started it going and so on and so forth. And I just saw today where China is threatening the United States with a mighty, quote, sea of coronavirus. Now, what is that? What is a sea of coronavirus? Well, China is threatening to impose pharmaceutical export controls, which would plunge America into the mighty sea of coronavirus. What am I talking about? Well, China has a tight grip on the supply chain. In fact, thanks to the Obama administration, the United States is dependent on China for its medication, its medical instruments, its facial masks, and its pharmaceuticals. So now the left-wing drive-by news, has an ally, the People's Republic of China. This crisis is being manipulated, and it is being used as a club to turn the American people against Donald Trump, and especially to wipe out his supporters. Donald Trump has a lot of supporters, and the Democrats are really unhappy with that. So this is how this crisis is being used. So the Democrats and the Chinese Communist Party are holding hands and working together to magnify the crisis to take down President Trump. That's what all of this is about. It's not about the coronavirus, it's about Donald Trump. And the coronavirus is an opportunity to take him down. You might say it's crisis management and crisis manipulation, the political strategy of the day. In 2008, White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel told the Wall Street Journal, he said, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste." Crises, he said, are opportunities to do what you could never do apart from the crisis. So crises are open doors that beckon people with an agenda to bring their agenda to pass. And that's really the political strategy of the day. At that time when Rahm Emanuel uttered those words, nobody would have thought that people's pain and fear and confusion would be manipulated for political advantage. But guess what? It is being manipulated for political advantage. And I'm not surprised. You know, the Democrats on the left, they are brutal, they are violent. You heard Chuck Schumer's statement a few days ago, unbelievable. It's still ringing in my ears. And I think one of the things that if the Democrats were reasonable, they would say, hey, this is proof that we need to build a wall on the southern border. They still don't want a wall. So, you know, they don't really want to help the United States of America. So let me close with a couple of questions and answers. Number one, why is Donald Trump so hated? Well, he's hated because he is neither a globalist nor is he a socialist. Globalism and socialism have been calculated to be used to bring America down, and Donald Trump doesn't want that to happen. He wants to rescue America. I hold in my book, in my hand, a book titled The Naked Communist by W. Cleon Skousen, or Skousen, I believe his name is Skousen. He wrote this book back in 1958, and he has the 45 goals of the Communist Party. Now, this is back in 1958. For example, goal number 17, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum of the schools. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. That's exactly what's happened. Here's another one. Gain control of all student newspapers. Here's another one. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. So if you've got an organization attacking the communist agenda or the communists, start riots that will attack those who are attacking communism. Then it says infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions, on and on and on. First of all, Donald Trump is neither a globalist nor a socialist. Secondly, the second reason why he is hated so much, because he is for conservative values like family. Okay, he's pro-life. And what's the greatest strength that America has? Strong families. Well, what's happened to our families? Our families are very weak, and the communists and the left, the Democrats, that they're rejoicing because they have a goal to tear down America. So as we look at the situation today, it's nowhere near as bad as it's made to be. You know, in the last several months, there were about 5,000 people who died from the coronavirus. Now, even if one person died, that's serious. But 5,000 compared to 80,000, for example, in 2017, who died from influenza. What a difference. Or just think of, even in an average year, about 12,000 people die from influenza, and that's in America. And yet, when we look at the coronavirus, 5,000 worldwide, say, wow, what a disaster. Yeah, it's serious. I don't want to, anytime anybody dies, that's a serious thing. It's a bad thing. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be sad for that. However, I'm saying that this is being built up into a disaster for one purpose, and that is to get Donald Trump's supporters to no longer support him. You just watch the news. You watch what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, and you'll see that this is exactly what's going on. God bless you, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.